71 beautiful books stand before me, but I only hold 8 in my hands. Sorry, I couldn't resist. Hi, how are you doing? How are we doing around here? I hope you're doing amazing. I hope you're doing swell. I hope you're doing fabulous.
Iced tea imported from England.
It's Tuesday, isn't it?
So as you could probably tell, I'm gonna be doing a video where I talk about my favorite books of the year, like my top 7 books. That does not mean that the remainder of these books I absolutely hated, I absolutely despised, they were so bad. No, all year long I was trying to figure out what I actually liked to read after listening to what everyone else liked to read, and then I was like, okay, what do I like?
What's happening? Who am I?
I'm gonna keep standing. Like, actually, I don't know where to stand. What do I do with my body? But yeah, I was trying to figure out what I actually like to read and what genres. I was just trying to explore, you know? And a lot of these books are also from school because, if you didn't know, I was an English major. I was an English major.
Yes, history, art history, that's 3. I'm a triple major.
So that required me to read a lot. You could just probably take a gander at this and be like, okay, you probably had to read those for school, okay, thank you. But I now have a much deeper understanding of the books that I like to read, and these 8 books kind of reflect my preferences. They're in no particular order. I don't like ranking books. Like, I tried making a tier ranking video, but that just made me feel bad. I didn't like doing that. Like, in the process of filming that, I was like, ugh. Then after I filmed it, I was like, oh, no, I'm not posting that. No, thank you. I believe that unless a book is really bad, like November 9 by Colleen Hoover, that level, unless it's like that, I believe that from every book that you read, there's something that you could take from it and be like, okay, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I like this. I enjoyed that. You know what I'm saying? But basically, no book is perfect, but most books have things that we could appreciate from them and take away. Again, as long as the book isn't like terrible and bad, like I mentioned. Anyway, basically, if a book made it onto this list, I either still think about it to this day and has positively impacted my life for the way that I view myself, for the world around me, made me feel comforted, or I fondly look back on the reading experience of being like, okay, that was a fun time. Or I cried during it. Like, there's a heavy theme with the books that I picked. Like, I cried during them. Not all of them on this list, but I'll let you know. Okay, I am gonna get started. Are you guys ready? So the first book on this list is Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reed. Great. This book is about a black character named Amira. Basically, Amira babysits for a white woman named Alex, who's like a mommy blogger kind of thing. And Alex's kid is named Briar. One night when Amira is babysitting Briar at like a higher end, more luxury grocery store, I guess. And in that store, some crusty security guard thinks Amira kidnapped Briar, and then someone else films the entire interaction, and then that video goes viral somehow. And after that, Alex wants to help Amira with the incident and try and comfort her in some ways. But there are just things that Alex isn't able to understand that Amira is going through, and the class, privilege, race difference. Amira's uncomfortable, and then like she talks to her friends about it, and their friends are like,
That's suspicious.
like Alex is not able to understand on a personal and thus deeper level because of all the privilege that Alex has. And also on top of that, Amira is 25 and about to lose her health insurance. Yippee! So she's trying to figure out her job and life circumstances, all that fun stuff. Oh my god, all that fun stuff? Then things get messier when Amira connects with someone who unknowingly is a part of Alex's past as well. From there, things just get messier and things unfold. The major themes that are in this book are class, privilege, but then also just finding who you are, and I think that's what I really liked about it. Because the parts that stood out the most to me is when Amira was just trying to figure out her life and kind of comparing herself to others, but then realizing that she shouldn't be so hard on herself. I loved watching Amira's confidence grow throughout the book as she figured out who she is, what she wanted, the path that she wanted to take forward. Also, this book made me feel like I was indulging in some type of gossip. Like, it made me feel like I was reading a Sally Rooney book in a way, but this book was more fun. Okay, this is not a Sally Rooney video, but I like the drama that's in Sally Rooney books, but I wish it was more funny, and this was that to me. I just felt like I needed to figure out what happened because things were getting so juicy, so I read this in like 3 days. Another reason why I find this comforting is because Amira at first was very soft-spoken, and she continues to be more soft-spoken throughout the novel, but she learns to face that, and then we see her face that, which is really cool and awesome. and I ate this up. And then I wanted to read a quote from this book that I still think about to this day. So here we go. One of the characters says, I thought the word lesbian had a D at the end, like lesbian, and I thought it was a verb. Kelly, Amira covered her mouth again. No, you didn't. I absolutely did, he said, and I thought that one woman could lesbian the other till I was like 16. Girl, help. So that's the first book on this list. The next book on this list is After Love by Tanya Hibbert. I feel like these pictures are comically small, but they're not? I don't think. Anyway, this book is a little bit more complicated to explain. So I'm gonna take a look at my notes, take a gander at my notes. This book made me cry like a little baby at the end. It's kind of criminal. Now, this is marketed as a YA sapphic romance, but I heard it be described as part YA sapphic romance, part YA sapphic tragedy. Essentially, it follows a teenager named Ash, and one day Ash meets Poppy on a field trip to a wind farm. And I watched an interview with the author of this book, Tanya Byrne, and she described it as perhaps the most glamorous meet cute ever invented. I agree. Basically what happens from there, and this is not a spoiler at all, because this is the entire premise of the novel. Ash dies on New Year's and she's the last one to die in her region of the year. So that means she's assigned to be the next year's Grim Reaper. She deals with what comes with that and basically reaping Reaper. Oh man. What I'm trying to say is that she helps guide people from them just dying to them crossing over into the afterlife and the whole process that comes along with that and helping them understand. Okay, so the first half of the story is when they meet. The second half of the story has to do with Ash dealing with what I just described and her hanging out with other Grim Reapers and like the masterminds behind this whole thing as she just like passes time. As they pass time waiting for people to die and then go through that process with them. And honestly, when I was making my outline for this video, the more that I took notes on it, the more that I realized this book is so sad, which, you know, earlier I mentioned that I cried like a little baby, but the first half was really sweet and I enjoyed seeing how Poppy's and Ash's relationship developed as they went on. But the reason why I like this book so much is because it focused on the premise of life being too short. So just like, live your life, do what you want to do what makes you happy, live, laugh, love, girly. Like, life's too short not to do the things that you're hesitant about doing, so just do them, you know? One thing I will say about this book though is that I've heard some criticism of it possibly including bi erasure. Like, I can't exactly remember how Ash or how Poppy identified, but the fact that it is marketed as a lesbian love story that you're dying to read, like that's how it's advertised online. But I heard that when I was watching a Georgia Mareed's video and I was like, oh, if one of them was bi, I kind of wish that that was more explored throughout the novel. That would have been nice. Other than that, if you want to read this novel, I would recommend checking the content warnings of this book since it does deal with heavier subjects. Now I want to read Now I want to read some quotes from the novel. You don't need to be better than anyone else. You just need to be better than who you used to be. It doesn't feel like it now, but one day you'll be scared of becoming the person you are today. Actually, you'll be scared that you never stopped being that person. If they want to leave, let them. You can miss someone, but not want them back. But never regret something you once wanted. Because if you let it, it will grow and grow until there's no room for anything else. For anyone else. There's a difference between those people and the ones who love you. Even if you question it because they don't say it in the way you need to hear it. Not everyone knows how to say I love you, so learn to hear the different ways they tell you. They say it all the time, even if it's just, don't forget your gloves. Or have you eaten anything today? Make sure you're listening. Yeah, that's the part that made me cry. Next, Tea Dragon Tapestry by Kay O'Neill. Awesome, great. Okay, so this is a graphic novel. It's a children's graphic novel that I learned about because of an Allison Pages video. I love Allison Pages. We love Allison Pages in this house. The Tea Dragon Tapestry is the last installment of the Tea Dragon Society graphic novel series. There are 3 in total, and it's a fantasy. It's a fantasy story that follows characters who are taking care of tea dragons, and these creatures grow tea leaves. And then if someone drinks the tea, it apparently tastes better than actual tea, which I would like to experience because then maybe I would like tea. Oopsies. But whenever someone drinks the tea, they get to experience some memories that happened between the dragon and then the dragon's caregiver. And that's such a creative idea. Like, how did Kay O'Neill come up with this? I need to know. Can I talk to them? I enjoyed the whole series, but to me, this one was the best because I felt like it really understood what it was and where it was going. And I think Kay O'Neill truly did a nice job wrapping things up nicely and hopefully. What I appreciate about this little ditty here is the fact that it focused so much on celebrating little moments and how the author gently urges their readers to be reminded of seemingly small but important things about life. Plus the artwork in here is so good. I love the color palette. I love how gentle and soft things are. Like, the whole message of this book is gentle and soft. Just chef's kiss, truly. It's relaxing and life affirming. And I also have some quotes from this one. Little one, you are the person you are meant to be. The years you worked diligently at the monastery will always be part of you, as will the years later when you feel lost and alone. And so will all the years yet to come, when the seeds you have been planting with your kindness and friendship will come to bloom. Perhaps passion takes many forms. Perhaps it becomes quiet and tired and needs time to rest. You feel like you've lost your path. It's natural to be sad. It's alright to let those feelings wash over you. You give them time to soak into the earth. That's when things start to grow again. As I was taking those notes, I was about to graduate college. I was like, those quotes, this hit different, and I did also cry like a little baby. Read it if you want. Read it, go crazy. The next book I have on this list, Ring Shout by P. Jolie Clark. Here's another banger. To be honest, before getting into this book, I was kind of intimidated, but basically the more I read it, the more easy it was to follow. And this is a novella, only consisting of 185 pages, but like, I personally cannot believe the amount of world building and character building that was fit into that small amount of pages. Like, how did Clark do that? It's just so good, and it focuses on a group of 3 friends. They're badasses. They fight off monsters called Ku Kluxes, and they send them to hell. The imagery was fantastic. There was a description of the monsters after a certain transformation it went through, and it was disgusting, and it was so well done.
Oh, okay.
And I could see the characters' actions being put into like a movie or like a mini series or a graphic novel, something like that. Like, it gives the reader a lot to think about during reading and then after reading. And with that said, I feel like this book deserves a reread from me. Obviously, I'm a pasty white individual and I'm clearly not qualified to talk about some of the themes, some of the messages in this book, because that's just not my lived experience. But for more of an explanation and more background about this book, I would recommend checking out Ray of Books' book review. So that's where I would recommend going for that. But for me, I loved the portrayal of friendship in this book. I love the emphasis on it, and I don't want to spoil anything. But at one point, something happens to one of the main characters, and that made me cry so much, and I was bawling my eyes out in the middle of one of my university's parking lots as random people were walking by. I think I have a picture of me doing that. But for me, I love books that center on friendships. Clark just made me feel so deeply for the main characters and even the secondary characters. I think that's all I have to say about this one. It's just... Now we have Notes on an Execution by Dania Kukofka. I'm so sorry if I butchered people's names. Actually, I'm perfect, so that means that I don't mispronounce people's names ever at all in my life. And also, my opinions about books are perfect too, because I have a bachelor's degree in English with a creative writing focus, so I obviously know which books are the best, and my opinions are never wrong. My opinions are not subjective, they are objective, and they are the truth and nothing but the truth. And if you disagree with that, you can't disagree with me, because I'm an expert and I know everything because I have a bachelor's degree in English. I'm kidding. Or am I? No. Now, I read Notes on an Execution in October because I was like, okay, it's spooky season. It's spooky. A lot of these books are from October. I've learned that I like spookier books that deal with darker themes, but then I also like lighter books that deal with lighter themes. It's just like, you gotta find a balance between the two, because if you read too much of the darker stuff, you're gonna be like, oh. Anyway. Notes on an Execution. This focuses on a serial killer as he is counting down his final 12 hours before he is executed on death row. Each one of his chapters counts down the hours before he is executed, and it's told in the second person, like, you did this, you did that, kind of like accusatory. And I was left wondering why the author chose to do this, and I came up with a few ideas, because, you know, I have a bachelor's degree in English and this is what I do. My first theory is that it puts the emphasis on paranoia, which is what Ansel, the serial killer, is seen experiencing a lot throughout the novel. Two, it just could be emphasizing how obsessed he is with himself and his own actions, and how his perspective is very him-centric. Like the world revolves around him and his actions and what he's done, which makes sense because he has a complete and total disregard for others and he's like, what about me? But then number three, it could just be emphasizing the idea of someone being merely accused rather than being, you know, punished for their own actions. Like Ansel didn't see himself as guilty even though he very clearly is, like duh. I just think the word you could be emphasizing the horrific and intense nature of his crimes and how he views them as more like loosey-goosey, morally gray when you're like, that's bad love. That's not a good look for you, mate. But anyway, that is just a theory. A book theory. But the bulk of the story focuses on three women who were impacted by him and the crimes that he committed. The three women that we follow is Lavender, so Ansel's mother. We also follow Safi, who is a detective who is hot on Ansel's trail, and she's like, that's suspicious, that's weird. But then like no one believes her. And then Hazel, which is Ansel's wife's twin sister, if that makes sense. Are you witnessing the family tree in your mind? As someone who loves Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, like those are my two favorite TV shows. I love pieces of media that deal with morally gray characters, why people do bad things, how people are affected by bad things, what leads someone to be who they are today and take the actions that they take, and that is explored with all of these characters in this book. I thought the focus on this topic was really well done, and reading about Lavender's life when she was married to Ansel's dad, I wanted to come to the barn and rescue her for myself. Like I wanted to pull up, beep beep, and then like she comes out and I'm like, okay, get in. We're going, we're leaving, we're fleeing. It's interesting to see how Safi's line of work develops throughout the book and how at first she's not believed and then she eventually is believed, and also to see Hazel's relationship with her twin sister and how it was before she met Ansel, after. To me, this was a study on why people are the way they are and how society perceives these kind of crimes and trials, because a lot of the time there's not enough emphasis on the thoughts, feelings, experiences that women had when it comes to male criminals. After reading this, I realized there's so much emphasis in society on the man who did it and not the victim. I don't know, it's a complicated subject, but basically the author says, you know, I'm gonna give these women a voice, and this book continuously highlights that point. And I thought it was really well done. Bravo! The next book, Unlikely Animals by Annie Hartnett. Now, I read Rabbit Cake by Annie Hartnett back in 2022, I think, and that book was unlike anything I've ever read before. It was so good. She has so many unique ideas, and I'm surprised that more people don't know about her, so I'm out here spreading the good word of Annie Hartnett. Not of Jesus Christ, but of Annie Hartnett. Also, this is really random and not related to this book, but there's a character in Rabbit Cake named Lizzie, and she is named after the Queen of England, and I read that part on the day that the Queen died. So I found that out, and then I just sent that part of the book to everyone I knew because I thought it was funny, it was comedy to me. Anyway, this book largely focuses on the perspective of spirits living in a cemetery as they watch the happenings in the town. It takes place in New Hampshire. It's a small little town, and it focuses on a main character, Emma. Basically, she's a recent med school dropout, and her dad was diagnosed with a mysterious illness that makes him hallucinate small animals, and then also this one naturalist. What was his name? Yeah, he was a naturalist and writer. His name was Ernest Harold Baines, and he was famous for having wild animals just loose in his house living there. And then the fact that Baines did that influences Emma's father's decisions, and chaos happens from there. Also, Emma has healing powers. This is also a magical realism book, but these healing powers are something that she hasn't been able to recover for a very long time, so she tries to recover them in the hopes of saving her dad. She used to use her magical powers with her ex-best friend Crystal, who went missing, and the only person who still believes that Crystal could be out there is Emma's dad. But everyone is like,
oh my god, come on, old man. But he's like,
yes, she is. I know it in my heart.
But then on top of this, Emma is dealing with a bunch of issues, identity-wise, trying to figure out what she wants to do with her life. What I really liked about this, and what makes it stick out to me, is Hartnett's distinct and unique voice, and the magical realism elements. I love magical realism in my books. And then Emma is also trying to figure out her life, so what happens in the novel is that she works as a substitute teacher for a while, and the kids that she is teaching put on this horrible play that goes so wrong and so badly. The stage was just falling apart. Everyone was screaming and crying. The story is funny, it's touching, it's emotional, but definitely I would recommend checking her out if you like books that center on grief, complicated family dynamics, weird psychology, but it's able to cover deeper issues in a way that's not depressing. So I really appreciate it for that. I also think that this book is highly responsible for my fox hyperfixation. Not the news channel, no, don't get it twisted. The animal. I love foxes so much. They are some of my favorite animals. Anyway, the next book that's on this list is Everyone's an Alien When You're an Alien Too by Jomini Sun. This is a graphic novel. It also made me cry like a little baby. I have a picture of me crying here. This is a cute and optimistic graphic novel. It follows an alien who is sent to Earth to just like observe nature and the living things in the environment. Anything from trees, frogs, bears, yetis, anything you could think of, it's probably in here. The alien finds friends on Earth after feeling like an outcast with the other aliens on his planet, and that's basically the entire premise. And I didn't know this until I did research for this video, but apparently the author of this book has a Twitter account where he also posts like more inspirational things, but they have like a bunch of typos in them. And I was like, is that intentional or not? But like, if it's not intentional, I think that's so funny. I just like to think that he posts things without proofreading them, and then he's like, oh my god, that was so wrong, when he looks at them later on. This book is just full of quotes that I was like, ooh, like they were simple, and they may give some people live, laugh, love energy, but they were just simple and wholesome to me. And like with the Tea Dragon Society, there are so many things that this book points out that people tend to just forget, and this book just reminds you of them, and they made me cry for that reason. I'm gonna read the part that made me cry. I never saw the big bird again. Why did the big bird leave? Oh, well, why did I say that like Wendy Williams?
Oh. All right. I can't. Oh my god, I gotta do that thing for Nickelodeon.
Let's just be thankful that we get to be on Earth at the same time as everyone else we get to meet, okay? I'm thankful that you still come back to visit me. That was just so cute. Love it. I don't need to say more. Now for the last book on this list. We got Unmasking Autism by Devin Price. Now this book is potentially my favorite book of the year. This one's kind of gonna get personal. But basically, somewhere at the end of this year, after talking to my therapist, I realized that I'm on the spectrum. Yeah, I spent 23 years of my life not realizing that I was autistic because I didn't know what it meant. I had so many misconceptions about it. Other people had so many misconceptions about it. They didn't really know what it meant either. There were so many things in my life that happened that if a little boy did it, they probably would have been like, oh, okay, he is probably autistic, we should get him evaluated. But when I did it, they just think I was misbehaving. Like I spent the majority of my life not knowing what autism was necessarily, but then I read this book and I was like, oh my god, that's what it actually is? Huh? Because the stereotype of autism is that it's just little white boys who are obsessed with trains, but like that's not all it is. That could be a person's presentation, but that's not everyone's. You know, that's what makes that stereotype of autism being that one thing and only that one thing harmful. And that's why we need more representation and more books like this. Slay. Like for example, we should have more characters that are not mean men, that are coded as autistic. Like maybe we should have more diversity in there. But this book felt like the author looked behind the curtains of my mind and was like, interesting. I'm gonna go write a book about this now. Thank you, I'll be back. But this book debunks misconceptions and myths about autism and actually explains what it is. Talks about the role of masking, which is why a lot of level 1 autistics appear as normal. You know, I'm a level 1 autistic, but I plan on being a level 100 autistic by the end of this year because autism is not a diagnosis, it's not a disorder. It's a game and a competition. Anyway, back to the point. And then it also talks about why a lot of us don't get diagnosed until a lot later in life or never, unfortunately, and the costs of masking, like not being able to get the proper help that you need, and how we can take autism and change the perception of ourselves through it. My face looks really red. I'm talking about myself, I'm getting really red. But this book focuses on why you should do things that make you happy rather than doing things that you think might make other people happy. Don't hide who you are and your wants and needs. Like, you're an individual too, bestie. I have so many tabs in that book. Hold on, let me get it. Like, it's kind of crazy. I think I'm just gonna flip to a random page and then read something. Let's see. The first quote that I tabbed: my social isolation was a way of rejecting other people before they could reject me. My workaholism was a sign of autistic hyperfixation, as well as an acceptable excuse to withdraw from public spaces that caused me sensory overwhelm. I got into unhealthy, codependent relationships because I needed approval, didn't know how to get it. So I molded myself into whoever the person at the time was looking for. Yeah, I would recommend this book if you are a level 1 autistic and you want to learn more about it, or if you don't really know what autism is or what it may look like for someone who masks. This is not a book about people who aren't able to mask, and I think that's really important to understand before you read it. But yeah, I would still recommend it. There are things in this book that might definitely not apply to other people who don't live in America, like the healthcare system and everything. Personally, I'll continue referring back to this book throughout my journey of life because it helped me a lot. I'm singing and serenading you. So yeah, those are all my thoughts. These are my top books of 2023. My arm hurts because I was holding my computer for so long. Ow. My arm is like shaking because of it. What was I saying? I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you were able to find some books that you maybe want to add to your to be read pile, your want to read list. Hope you're doing well. Thank you for listening to me talk about books. I hope I made sense. I think that's all. Goodbye. Goodbye.